What if I told you that your power was not in reacting, but in remaining steady no matter what? What if I told you that there was a way to maintain steadiness and really live from a place of responsivity rather than from a place of reactivity? Welcome to your Monday message. I am Dharma Shakti, your host, with your weekly dose of something inspirational, where I am pulling from ancient wisdom and helping you apply it to modern day times. I have a doozy of a verse for you today. This is something that I have had many discussions with my own teachers with, and am still working on getting better and better at this, but I can tell you, even in my effort to get better at it, it has definitely changed my life. So let's unpack this today. We are talking about emotional intelligence, balance, centeredness, but really emotional intelligence. This is the key essence of our Monday message today. And this wisdom comes from the Bhagavad Gītā, chapter 6, verse 8. Let me read the Sanskrit to you. I'm going to read it because I don't have it memorized, but I'm going to read it to you. And I'm going to do my best with the Sanskrit here. Jnana vijnana triptatma kutasto vijitendriya yukta ityauchate yogi samalostrama kanchana. Okay, let's get into the English. I just like to be true to tradition and really reference the original text that these things come from. But the translation is, I'm going to read this too, so I get it word for word for you guys. A person is said to be established in self-realization, or we could say higher consciousness, and is called a yogi when they are fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. They are fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization of said knowledge. Such a person is situated in transcendence, when we can rise above, and is self-controlled. This person sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stone, or gold, as the same. Okay, what a verse. Let's unpack this, right? These verses are just really straightforward, but how do we apply, like, what does that look like in our modern times? Because the context of this verse is different than the context of our everyday life, but the wisdom is still there. So let's unpack how this applies to you. A quick Sanskrit breakdown, just so that we can glean some of these words and become more familiar with these Sanskrit words, especially if you want to study this knowledge and have a real connection to its source and its origins. So, jnana. This word jnana means knowledge. Okay, knowledge that you acquire through studying and reading and going to lectures. Really acquiring knowledge, information, philosophical concepts, right? This is knowledge. You're intellectually acquiring it. You're getting it, okay? Vijnana is wisdom or applied knowledge. So when you get that philosophical knowledge and you practice it, you apply it, and now you have wisdom, an embodied experience that comes from practicing these things, which can translate into now a knowing. It's not just something that we intellectually understand, but we have an embodied experience of it that brings us to a place of knowing. Tripta Atma. This word Atma means self. Tripta Atma is content within the self. Content within the self. Kutastha, steady and immovable. Vijitendriya, this is the indriyas, or the senses. So Vijitendriya is a master of the senses, or we master the senses. And then we have Sama. Sama again means equal. We discussed this last week in our Monday message when we talked about samatvam. Sama, a steadiness or a sameness or equal, equanimity. And then we have loshtra asma kanchana. This seeing of clay, stone, and gold as sama, as the same. So a simple explanation of this verse is that a yogi's strength is emotional steadiness. Not being swayed by gain or loss, praise or blame, or comfort or discomfort, challenge or easy. Emotional steadiness. Okay, what do we do with that? because I'm a Cancer sign. If you know me, you know I'm a watery person and I feel my feels. And so that can be really challenging for me. A person who is, considers themselves empathic, has a lot of empathy, a highly sensitive person. If you're identifying with any of these, this kind of philosophy and wisdom feels like, oh my God, I want that. And also so hard. Like, how do I do that? It almost feels impossible. So let's talk about what it means to have emotional steadiness. I think we have a not great idea of what that means. Sometimes we think balance or emotional steadiness or detachment means that we're aloof, we're apathetic, or we're almost disassociated from the reality of what we might be feeling in our human self. And it's important that we learn to straddle both our human experience while we strive towards that higher consciousness. How are we in both of those worlds? So I want to unpack that for you today. So I'm going to give you 5 key points. I'm going to break it down and just drop some like little points that you can hold on to as practical applications of how to do this. Okay, so knowledge plus wisdom leads to contentment. When you have knowledge, when you have information and understanding over these sort of philosophical teachings, and you have the wisdom, you've actually applied them, you've practiced them, you've put them into play, you can then stand in contentment or a level of comfort, a level of comfortability in those things because you know it's your truth. Not just truth that you've adopted, but truth that you've practiced and applied and is based in your own value system, based in your own integrity, and based in what feels aligned for you. So wisdom, vijnana, is lived experience of that knowledge. And when it's combined, right, the knowledge and the lived experience, this brings true satisfaction because you're not chasing external validation, you're actually anchored in your truth. Which means you can stand in your truth even if someone judges it, even if somebody is criticizing it, even if somebody is throwing stones at it, even if somebody is challenging you in it. You are steady because you know your truth. It's based in wisdom, it's based in knowledge, it's based in values that you've already reflected on and applied and figured out how that best aligns for you. Therefore, you're able to stand in it. And so you're able to be content in moments where people are trying to sway you from that place of standing in your truth because you know what your truth is. How do we practice this? Okay, read or listen to wisdom daily. Read scriptures, read sacred text, read philosophy, listen to and read about personal development and self-development, and reflect on how it applies to your own life. It's not enough to take it in. You have to reflect. How does this apply to me? You have to assess, am I practicing these things? And then you need to reflect on, as I practice them, how did I do? As I practice them, how does it feel? As I practice them, what are the results that I've gotten from applying this knowledge? So a small daily step that you can take is to journal, right? Or ask yourself at the end of the day, what wisdom did I apply today? And over time, this practice will build a deep sense of fulfillment that no external achievement can replace. What wisdom did I apply today? I cannot stress this enough. It is not enough to just take in information or to take in teachings that are full of wisdom and full of philosophy. It is not enough. Your practice does not end there. That is not what brings you to a place of emotional steadiness. It is taking that information in, that knowledge, and applying it and self-assessing how I did with it so that we can grow and improve, so that we can now stand in that as our own truth and not be swayed when it's challenged, when you get pushback, when people have something to say about it, when people judge you for it. You know who you are because you've put in the time, you've put in the practice, you've put in the reps, you've put in the practice that says, yes, this is my truth. My next point, balance means seeing everything beyond material appearances. Maybe you've heard the saying, see the soul and not the story. to see the message and not just the mess, to see the wisdom and not just the wound, right? There's the surface part of what we're experiencing, and we do have to learn to kind of go deeper than that. So balance or centeredness means seeing value beyond material appearances, beyond the material surface, beyond just what you see at first glance. Why does this matter? Society teaches us to label things as more valuable or less valuable, to, gold over stone, praise over criticism, success over failure, outcome over effort. And the yogi is seeing through appearances, recognizing the same essence in all, or rather recognizing that there is essence in all. This creates freedom from attachment and prejudice. Oh, that thing happened over here, it's really good. That means such and such about that person. And oh, this thing happened over here and that's a failure, and that means such and such about this person. We're too black and white. And we're too much like looking on the surface and not seeing what's underneath it. And when we can evaluate, self-evaluate, and self-reflect, this happened, and what is underneath it? What's underneath it? What is the lesson here for me? Where is the wisdom in the wound? Where is the message in the mess? So how do we practice this? Next time you're faced with comparison, like with objects, this is better than that, or with people, I like them better than that person, or with outcomes, I prefer this one over that one. Pause and ask, what is the deeper value here beyond the appearances? There is a lesson in every blessing, and there is a blessing in every lesson. But if you only see what's on the surface, you are going to miss the lesson, and you are going to sometimes miss the blessing, because you're seeing the blessing and not the lesson, and you're seeing the lesson and not the blessing. We have to learn to go beyond the surface and ask, what is the deeper value here beyond what I see on the surface? So small daily steps that you can do to practice this is really just learning to practice gratitude for the simple things, but also learning to look beyond what's on the surface. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? What is it? What can I glean from this? What can I pull? Where are the nuggets of wisdom that I can pull out of what seemingly looks like a loss? Okay, and over time, this shifts our perspective from chasing gold to honoring the sacredness in everything. And this includes practicing gratitude. Okay, my next point is mastery of senses equals mastery of reactions. Our senses are constantly pulling us outward. This is the natural condition of humanness. This is our default setting, that our senses are constantly going out towards pleasure, towards comfort, towards distraction. So without awareness, we react impulsively. And a yogi is learning to master their senses so that we're not reactive and we're not being impulsive, but that we are actually aware of where our senses are going, which means freedom to choose response instead of just being hostage by craving or aversion or something that catches our eye. So how might we practice mastering our senses? Well, first and foremost, that's what your yoga practice is for. That's what all that asana and the breath work and the concentration and staying steady is helping you get better at. When you get better at that on your mat, you're much better able to, and more likely to, hopefully with a good teacher who reminds you to, practice that in your everyday life. Right? But you practice it in that safe environment. You're getting familiar with that terrain on your mat so that you can do it in your day-to-day. But you can also practice noticing your sensory triggers, right? Noticing sensory triggers, scrolling, snacking, noises. Practice pausing before reacting and ask, am I choosing this? Or is my habit choosing this for me? Right? So sometimes when our senses are triggered, we might go to scrolling, we might go to snacking, we might, want to distract ourselves with noise. And so we want to pause before we go to those things and ask, am I choosing this with intentionality, or is my habit choosing this for me? Is my nervous system choosing this for me? Small daily steps to implement this practice is called a pause practice. Okay, so just try one pause practice a day. Wait 3 breaths before picking what you choose to eat out of your refrigerator or order from the menu. Take 3 deep breaths before choosing the words that you're going to speak into that conversation, or take 3 breaths to pause before you reply to a text message or an email. This builds the muscle of self-mastery, right? Oftentimes it's our nervous system that is responding to things. And when we can pause and regulate our nervous system, because when our nervous system is regulated, we're able to choose intentionally. If we're functioning from our nervous system that is activated, or in that fight or flight, freeze or fawn mode, or overstimulated because it's bombarded with what the world is throwing at it, we're reacting from a dysregulated system. When our nervous system is regulated, we are able to respond. Without a regulated nervous system, our likelihood of choosing response over reaction is 0. It's just 0. And it's not that our nervous system, it doesn't have a necessary role in reacting. There are times when that is necessary, in emergencies, when you need a quick response, like it's an emergency. But most of our life is not an emergency. And we are reacting from a activated nervous system rather than responding from a place of a regulated nervous system, which is where our true power is. Okay, my next point is emotional intelligence equals steadiness and chaos. Good segue. Emotional intelligence equals steadiness and chaos. Why does this matter? Emotional intelligence isn't suppression. It's not about being apathetic or stoic or aloof or so detached that it doesn't bother you. That's not emotional intelligence. Emotional, or what we're talking about here with this yogic approach to emotional intelligence and being able to be steady and see the same in all things. Emotional intelligence here is understanding, regulating, and channeling our emotions wisely. I'll say that again. This emotional intelligence that equals steadiness and chaos that I'm speaking of, that the Gita is speaking of, is understanding, regulating, and channeling emotions wisely. The yogi responds with steadiness even when emotions run high. This creates clarity in our actions and harmony in our relationships. So it's not that you don't feel, it's not that you're so transcendent that you don't feel, or that you're not also influenced, and that you're not educated, and you're not moved by the emotions that you feel. Okay, it's not that. They're still very much there. You're just not held hostage and captive by those emotions that sway you out to the edges, and that's where you're leading from. So we can practice this by beginning to notice not just what we feel, but why. We can learn to label emotions in the moment so that we can use those emotions as indicators that move us in a direction that we want to move, that we need to move, that is important to move, but that we do it from a place of a regulated nervous system. So we might say things like, I feel anxious because I'm attaching to outcome. Naming gives power. I feel outraged because of what's happening in the world. We can then use that as fuel to pick up our light and be that change that we want to see in the world. But we do it from a regulated place. We don't do it from a dysregulated way out into the extreme places. This is the yogic approach, okay? So we can take small daily steps here by taking a pause before we react and ask, is this response coming from my higher self or from my activated or triggered self? Is this a response that's coming from my higher awareness, or is this a reaction that's just coming from my nervous system that is reacting? That's its job, but coming from that reactive nervous system. If I can just take some deep breaths, name what I'm feeling, regulate my nervous system, can I make a move from there? Can I make an offering from there? Can I make a conversation from there? Can I make a decision from that place? But you got to pause and ask yourself, is this a response that's coming from my higher self? Or is this a reaction that's coming from my triggered self, my lowered natured self, my very human, egoic, reptilian brain self, which is something that we all have. We all have this part of us. But it is in the pause that we can sift and sort and say, okay, my human self is feeling this. How can I use it as fuel for my higher self to move in a direction here that's going to be progressive and have forward momentum in my life? This alone transforms conflict into clarity. This pause and this question will transform conflict into clarity for you. Okay, point number 5, balance is the mark of true yogic maturity. Centeredness is the mark of true yogic clarity. You know those exercise balls? I think now that they've like kind of cut them in half and put like a wood board on it, and you're having to like do these exercises with this like wobbliness, and balance doesn't always look still and perfect. Balance is an efforting to stay in center. And I really want you to get this like visual idea of balance as perfect, centered, and like never swaying. That's not realistic. Balance is doing this maneuvering as you're being pulled in different directions to stay centered. So this idea of centeredness is the mark of true yogic maturity. Why does this matter? Advanced yoga isn't about complicated poses or even deep meditative states that you do when you're alone in your room or in a cave. It's about equanimity, remaining steady in success and failure, comfort and discomfort, praise or criticism. This ability to not be swayed out into the edges to where you fall off of center. This is the real test of your growth. It doesn't mean that you don't feel the pull or the lean as you're navigating that stuff, but that you don't fall out into those edges of polarity, that you don't fall out into those edges of extremes, you don't fall out into the other end of the spectrum that comes with praise and criticism, the high highs and the low lows, but that you are aware those things are maybe pulling on you, but you're making these adjustments to maintain centeredness in all of that. So how do we practice this? Reframe challenges as opportunities to practice steadiness. When something doesn't go your way, remind yourself, this is my yoga practice right now. This is my yoga practice. In the same way that when you're holding that really difficult high plank, your Utthita Chaturanga Dandasana for 5 more breaths than you want to. And that's your yoga practice, to stay calm and to stay confident and to stay fixed and steady in that moment without just yelling a F you to the teacher or plopping down on the mat and making a big scene or sighing with deep frustration. Instead of doing that, you stay steady. Same goes for your day-to-day life. When you're ever in that situation that feels like that high plank longer than you want to be there, this is my yoga practice right now, is how do I navigate this balance that gives me centeredness as I'm being enticed to sway out into my edges. This is my yoga practice right now. So what are some small steps that you can do every day to actually do this practice? At the end of each day, you can reflect. Did I stay balanced today? Where did I lose it?
And what did I learn? What can I learn from the losing it? Because sometimes the losing it is how we learn that we blew past center. Over time, this regular practice of reflection can strengthen our inner maturity. Listen, if you are not reflecting and you are not in this place of self-awareness, a regular practice of looking at yourself in a way that you're trying to acquire more self-awareness that comes through self-reflection, you're not going to have growth, you're not going to have change, you're not going to have transformation, and you're not going to learn your lessons. It requires self-reflection, which requires radical self-awareness. So make sure that you're doing these small practices. Ask yourself, where did I lose it? And be honest. Where did I lose it? And what can I learn? What did I learn from losing it on that person or in that situation? Okay? You might feel your feelings, but what can you do while you're feeling them to regulate yourself enough to stay calm, to stay centered? I know we might not like that word calm, so centered is a much better question. Regulated, a much better word. I don't like it when people are like, oh, calm down. But can you regulate yourself so that you're not way up here in the excessiveness of the emotion, but can you regulate yourself as you're feeling the feels? How can I still stay regulated? Even though I feel like I want to punch this person in the face, how do I stay regulated in this moment? Okay, so in our relationships, it might look like not overvaluing praise or collapsing under criticism, because sometimes that's where we get swayed. We're overvaluing praise and someone's not giving it to us, so we go out into an emotional extreme, or we collapse under the criticism. That might not be a criticism for that person, but we take it as criticism. So how do we regulate ourselves when we're feeling those feels? That's the key there. Your nervous system is letting you know you're swaying out into the edges, and you have to notice that you feel that and find ways to regulate yourself so that you don't sway out into those edges and then be held hostage by those edges that are now navigating your life. Okay, here are some journal prompts for you to sit with this and really go deeper here. Where do I lose emotional balance most often, and how can I steady myself? Where are the areas where I lose that emotional balance, and what are the tools that I can use to steady myself? Like, what is a practice I can turn to when I know that's happening to steady myself? Some more reflective questions. What situations trigger my strongest emotional swings? This is a good one to know. You need to know this about yourself. What situations trigger my most strongest emotional swings? And how do I usually react? How does that serve me? Is it serving me? And again, coming back to that previous question, what can I do to steady myself when I notice that's happening? Where could I practice neutrality? Where could I get better at practicing neutrality? This is a really powerful question. Where could I get better at practicing neutrality? Well, for me, I have been working on practicing neutrality around other people's opinions about me. How can I be neutral when somebody shares or expresses their opinion about me? And then what tools help me find balance, right? Breathing practices, taking a pause, it might look like taking space, journaling, seeing a therapist, going for a walk. What tools help me find balance? And what would life look like if I cultivated steadiness daily? What would my life look like? How would I move through challenges? How would I move through loss? How would I move through high moments of success? How would I move through excitement? How would I move through anxiety? If I could cultivate steadiness daily. Now, my last words of encouragement for you here is that balance or centeredness doesn't numb you. It shouldn't numb you. This is not something that is making you apathetic or aloof or detached in a way where you're disassociated. This kind of balance and centeredness should empower you. The true yogi shines not in extremes, but in steady presence.
You may be going through an extreme moment or an extreme situation, but that true yogi will shine because of their steadiness and their presence, not because they are pulled out into those extremes. So how can you learn to understand your nervous system when it's triggered, activated in that fight or flight response, and activate those tools that help you maintain steadiness without suppressing or disassociating from what you're feeling, but rather using those feelings as indicators, those emotions as indicators to fuel the direction that you want to go in a healthy, healing, wholesome, progressive way that will look different in every situation. I hope that you found this message insightful and helpful. If you did, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to just help me get these messages out to more people, but also to be notified. I think you have to hit the bell button to get notified. But like this video, subscribe to this video, just help me get my message out to more people. And if you would like a deeper dive on this topic with some very powerful journaling questions, I'm going to drop the questions, the reflective questions, down in the description box below here for you, but I also will have a PDF that you can download with a deeper dive. I highly recommend these. They are meant to support you in practicing that self-awareness and that self-reflection. So if you want that journal download, you must click the link that I'm going to put down below to join my new platform called the Empowered Living Community. You need to join and become a member. It's totally free, and you can access all my Monday messages and all the PDF downloadable journal prompts. They live there. Plus, you will get first dibs to all of my free content and other offerings that I'm going to be posting on there. Right now there's some free stuff up. You'll definitely want to have access to that. It's a way to interact with me if you like doing this kind of work. Okay, if you want to live an empowered life, you are a life warrior or a light leader, that platform is for you. Let me help you feel empowered so you can be a light in the world. We need more people who are steady and willing to shine their light, and I want to help you do that. So please head over to my Empowered Living community, become a member, access these journal prompts, do the work. Transformation requires your application. If you can sit down and reflect in your self-awareness, you are applying this knowledge to yourself directly, you will have that wisdom, that vijnana. Okay, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this message. Sending you so much love from my heart to yours. Wishing you the best week, and that you do what you need to do to regulate your nervous system. So important. Regulate your nervous system so that you can keep your head held high and your heart open wide and make those better decisions for yourself and your life. Sending you all my love. Namaste.